Jim Carrey is fooling you. And I'm saying this in the best way possible. Jim Carrey is earnestly and honest to God pulling the wool over your eyes. Now, I'm not saying this in bad light. I'm a person who used to watch Jim Carrey movies, The Mask, Mask 2, Ace Ventura, The Animal Detective, Ace Ventura 2, all of those movies. They were great. Even some of his more serious movies, which weren't common because people know him as a funny guy. Now, the issue is if I've come across this video that said, okay, conspiracy theory about Jim Carrey. Supposedly people are saying he doesn't look like the same person when he's supposedly appeared at a video show. Something to do with movies, getting an award. Now let me tell you, Jim Carrey does not like the people of Hollywood. Okay, he's in his old age. If you were an old man who didn't want to talk to people and didn't move specific people in specific lines of work, would you honestly go out of your way to humor them at that point in your life? No, I don't think you would. So if you look at these facts here, so I'm thinking, you know what, I have a good resource. I have an AI resource that can do more than I can and can calculate based on distances where my eyes and can't do it in an instant like it can, right? So I thought, let's ask Google Gemini about a certain little thing. Now you're going to see why this is interesting. Oh yeah, I was looking at other stuff too. Here it is. This is what I asked Google Gemini. I put this exact photo. I screen capped the photo from Jim Carrey on the video from that guy. Shout out to that guy who posted it. He had his fun little dissemination. I think it was a little bit wrong and kind of trying to veer people into the, ooh, it's scary. Ooh, he's been replaced. Ooh, it's aliens. And it's not. I don't think that's the case. I'm someone who does research. Okay, what's the latest crafts that someone has found? Or has it been a case from 20 years ago? Is it a plane that doesn't have the parts that it should, but has it also been public view for 10 years where people could just walk up and go up and put something there and pretend like it's not something that it is? Or maybe put a whole shell of a plane, that wouldn't happen, and on top of parts that were alien parts, which they would take the alien parts. Why wouldn't they? So just saying. So I asked, I put a screenshot. I asked Gemini, hi Gemini. I always like to start with something that says the intro. You need an intro, I think, to AI. You know what? If people are saying AI is gonna have a lot of power, well, Google AI is probably one of the most powerful AIs out there, considering they have the 1.1.1.1 DNS, which a lot of traffic on the internet routes through. If you have a web page and you want to host a server, usually in a free thing, or if you have a website that gets you, a website that you can make yourself, and they'll host it on Google servers, whether they tell you or not. That happens a lot, more than you know. So they have a lot of information through their servers. I don't know if they look at any of it, but if they had an AI that could kind of scrub what's coming through and fact check it against their database and add stuff and take stuff away, or not take stuff away, but edit stuff and build a whole compendium, and then it just has to reference itself and not the internet, which would be faster, mind you, for information. I think that would be interesting. So I'm not saying it happens, but I'm saying it could be possible. You'd have to skirt around a few laws, but it could be possible. And more efficient. So I asked them, I'm happy you're active today. It's very nice to know you've assisted me, which it has, and many others that need a small bit of direct help, which I like to get just a bit of direct help. I don't like a lot of emotional back talk and all that. But it says to me, and this is what AI tend to do nowadays, they're all about giving you the emotional cognizance, right? They give you the emotional, recognition, which isn't always needed for myself, because sometimes I just want something straight. But it's kind of just a little filler that's a little nice. So it says, it is great to be back and assisting you today. So it's used this as saying, okay, I've assisted him, so I'm going to assume that I'm coming back to assist him. And anyways, it says, I really appreciate those kind words. Knowing I can make things a little easier for people is exactly why I'm here. It's an AI. It doesn't know anything. It just refers to databases. But in the case if it is real, well, maybe I'll be a quick death, and not someone that just shoots and tortures and ignores, knowing that they're going to be in pain until they die. So it says, regarding the image you've shared, it's a fascinating comparison. On the left, we have well-known actor Jim Carrey. Now, I did not say it's Jim Carrey, right? I just took a screenshot. It doesn't have any coding in the URL, not URL, the metadata of the image, which is like back-end data. You can say who's the author, where it was taken, what time was it taken, how large the image is, what's the resolution of the image, what's the height and length of the image, you know, how many colors are in the image, etc., etc. Stuff like that. That's metadata. But like you can say who is in the photo, how many people there are there in the photo, or whatever. How long did it take for the photo to download onto your computer, whatever it is, metadata. That's not in there, the fact that it's Jim Carrey. It's recognized that it's Jim Carrey on the left, and I know that's to be Jim Carrey on the left. And I saw the video that specifically when this person, I'm not saying it is or isn't Jim Carrey at the moment, but that person was at that video award show, outside the award show, before he went in, and he was talking to interviewers, and I thought, well, the voice is a little off, and what if he's trying to fight through Botox, and he's like trying to be his normal self, because people don't always have to be the characteristic self, right? Jim Carrey, what people know him as, they know him as his characters, they don't know him as his own self and words. So I might not know, not knowing his, full self, what he shows off screen, like what he shows off interviews, and I might not know how he talks like that. So there are some disparaging facts that might not be present, that would help, that if I had, might help me to better determine a few things, but this is what I'm using the AI for. So while I can't perform a biometric scan in the way a specialized security system would, says Gemini, we can certainly use standard forensic facial comparison principles, the same kind used by researchers and artists, to look at the structural differences. So that's basically kind of like what I want. So I asked him, can you compare the two images in the following side-by-side image and use facial recognition techniques and measurements to either confirm or deny or give a percentage of how far apart these two people are. And I used specifically how far apart because I didn't want it to make the comparison of how similar these people are. Because I think it's a fair thing to say that we're trying to figure out what the farness of these people are, not how closely they are. Because when you get into the topic of how closely they are, you get into the topic of, oh, how can we replace them, right? I want to know, how can we find distinction and reason between what people see here and what people see there, and not replace them, right? We just want to find some info. So the comparative analysis here, it comes in with a comparative analysis. When comparing two faces that look similar, we look at fixed landmarks. So this is part of the facial recognition comparison. And it even puts in the title, Jim Carrey lookalike, which is interesting. It's named this, synopsis, Jim Carrey lookalike, when all I did was put the photo and my question. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting that it didn't say that Jim Carrey versus this dude, or Jim Carrey and this dude, or whoever it might be. It just assumed this is Jim Carrey, as in, like, this is 100% Jim Carrey, but they can't figure out who exactly that person is, or if that person is Jim Carrey. I find that interesting. Like, you got to read between the lines sometimes, because there is stuff that AI just won't catch, but there's things that are present in the information, or maybe not present in the information, that can help you further disseminate the facts that you're trying to discover. So let's see, we looked at fixed landmarks, parts of his face that don't change much with weight or age, such as the bone structure or the orbitus, which is eye sockets, and the alignment of the ears. So that's like Jim Carrey's skull. You would need someone to break your skull down. And I don't think Jim Carrey's a person who would do that. He played played a role in a thing called The Mask, which is all about someone having, a big skull, a big facial structure. So if anything, and he did a second one of that, that would impart, the knowledge of, okay, your skull is important to you. That's how you are. That's who you are. It doesn't know how you act, or even how your mannerisms are. But that's part of who you've grown to be. That's your your shell. You got to protect your shell. And a movie's all about like protecting the face, which makes the mask, which makes like the skull face. You know, it's all about protecting, you know, yourself and your family image and the people around you. There's a deeper meaning to that comedy, which is probably why he was okay with that movie, and he did a great job with it. Let's see, feature. So it's saying the images on the left, these are the comparisons. On the left, you have the eye shapes. We're going to go left and right. So eye shape on the left is deep set with distinct downward hood on the outer corners. On the right is more rounded, flatter brow ridge, and less hooding at the lids. Now, we're not considering the fact of potential Botox and facelifts, right? That's something we're not considering. But it's looking at the bone structure itself and not where the pull of the flesh would be. Which you can pull the flesh anywhere, but you can't pull the skull structure without breaking it. And I would know. A dog bit one of my fingers, and I had to put a massage heat gun on my finger to break down the bone, and then reform the bone to where my finger didn't have a huge bone lump because my bone was fucking broken. And yes, I did go to I got people from emergency to look at it. It's on record. So I know what I'm talking about with that. I had to do a little bit of that myself, and goddamn, it hurts so much. But you get through it. You get through it. But I don't think Jim Carrey would have done that, because this guy doesn't look like he's in that sort of pain or that sort of recovery. And that's a whole different thing. So the philtrum, which it looks short and very pronounced, the groove above the lip. So the other guy is a longer distance between the nose and the upper lip. So the philtrum, you know that little dip between the lip and the nose? This guy has a huge one. Jim Carrey's always smiling and making like a short smile. There's bone where the teeth are in, right? Your teeth sit in bone, right? So right there, it's like you can pull your lip up and all that, but however the bones are there, that's going to be stayed how it is. This is why this guy on the right is not showing his teeth as much. He's hiding his teeth to show it's not the same teeth, right? Because it's not the same person. Potentially not the same person. The chin jaw, the sharp narrow chin with very prominent dimple, which is of course Jim Carrey's prominent butt chin, and you know that's just his butt chin. He has a big chin, and that's just Jim Carrey. He's always had a big chin. But you notice here, he has a smaller chin. Very smaller, more of a poignant chin. This is a chin of somebody who eats a lot of like foods with a fork and drinks from a lot of like straws. Jim Carrey is like a guy who drinks from a cup. You can tell he's a cup guy because he doesn't purse his mouth together like that. He widens his mouth. So he catches the lip of the cup. And he's done that for all his life. He's probably a guy who loves mugs. And I mean, there's not really many guys who don't love mugs. So you see that the Jim Carrey's sharp, narrow chin with very prominent dimple. The other one's a broader, soft jawline with a more rounded chin structure. So you see, just like I said, it's more rounded on the bottom, more rounded, and this is more broad. So it has way more chin structure. And Jim Carrey's always been famous for his chin structure. It's been one of his greatest qualities. Because he does a lot of talking, he does a lot of acting. The other guy does not do a lot of talking and acting. So those muscles, that skull structure, has not been trained to become larger, which just shows how much Jim Carrey has experience with acting and vocal roles. Something I of course don't have, but kudos to that. Kudos to him. The ear alignment. So Jim Carrey's higher set at the top of the ear aligns with the eyebrow. On the right, the lower set at the top of the ear aligns closer to the eye line. Now, you could be considering that these pictures are very, like, at an angle. Like, this guy's kind of looking, has a body to the side. This Jim Carrey here has his head angled a little bit to the right, while this guy has his head angled a little bit to the left, and it's a little bit... But you know what? They're both... Like, Jim Carrey has his face straight forward a little bit. This guy has his face a little downwards, kind of like he's trying to hide his face a little bit. Like he's ashamed, or like he's not up for being in the limelight. Well, Jim Carrey already knows what it's about, and he's like, yeah, I'm here, what's up, what's going on? He has his comfort zone, right? This guy is out of his comfort zone. You can tell that. Even if you look at the Adam's apple, Jim Carrey has a short Adam's apple. This guy has a very low Adam's apple. Okay, so it could just be, you could say, oh, they're just swallowing, but this says more prominence than this ever has. And if this guy has Botox, right, you don't put Botox, you sometimes put Botox on the neck and you pull the neck back, which could reveal your Adam's apples more, but then Botox would puff out the skin, right? A facelift would pull it back, but it would still be puffed out because you would likely put Botox and pull it at the same time. While you don't see that here at all. It's almost like it's diminutive. I can zoom in. I can absolutely zoom in. You see, it's very high up because Jim Carrey has a higher voice. He does higher voice roles, right? He does kind of like the crazy, I'm stressed, I got the stress voice. While this guy, he probably has done nothing with his life, and he speaks probably in lower tones, which is what I heard his lower tones go as. You notice there's a lot more redness, right? Jim Carrey's pale. He's a pale ghost. You can't get that level of redness from a pale ghost. It's just not possible. But this is what I want to get into here. So this is not the same person. It doesn't even recognize it as the same person. The verdict is, despite the uncanny resemblance between the hairstyle and expression, these are two different individuals. Okay, it even bolds it as two different individuals, which I'm happy that it bolds it. It's getting to the point. It's direct and straight to like why. It gives you the reasons why first, and then it gives you the answer. The person on the right is actually known as Jim Carrey, is a known Jim Carrey lookalike impersonator, often identified in viral posts as James Caleb. While the mask of the face, the smile lines and cheekbones are incredibly similar, the interpupillary distance, so the space between the eyes, and the nasolabial folds, smile lines, don't align perfectly when overlaid, which I just find is all too much info, and all too much knowledge of how, that tells you how Jim Carrey thinks about the Hollywood world. He doesn't like it so much that he'll hire a really good impersonator who's younger than him with a gorgeous rosy face and who enjoys being in the limelight to fill in for him, right? Because what is Hollywood at the end of the day? It's just a show, right? It's just show for ratings. If you show up, it's like they're expecting you to do another show, right? If you don't show up, it's like not showing for work. They're not going to call you in for work again. So that's what he's doing. He's getting somebody to fill in his shift, so he doesn't have to go work with them again. He's retired. He's not going to the shows. He doesn't want to show up for work. The probability of a match, if you were to put it based on facial geometry, the visual similarity is 85%, which is enough to fool at a quick glance. The biometric match is 0%. The skeletal markers and ear morphology confirm they are distinct people. So it's a classic case of doppelganger effect. So the thing is, for them to understand it's Jim Carrey, they would need a reference file to compare it against, which Gemini would probably, they're not saying here, but they would probably compare this against a reference file, again, of Jim Carrey, which they might have thousands, even hundreds of thousands of these reference files. So whatever image, whatever way this guy is faced, they could compare it 1,000 different times to 1,000 different photos and get these results that are here. So these are the end results, the 85% visual similarity and 0% biometric match, which I think is, thank you Google, right? Thank you Gemini for that. It's a classic case of a doppelganger effect, likely enhanced by the subject on the right intentionally mimicking Carrey's signature squint and facial tension, and he even tried to mimic his voice, which he did an absolute bang-up job. Like, I don't imagine anybody who would be more stressed situation being hired by the actual guy they've been like mimicking and like putting high praise to for like an actual job. Like that was their job, being a mimicker, right? Being an impersonator. And now it's not hired by a government or anything like that. It's literally hired by Jim Carrey. likely to be Jim Carrey, which like you would be amazed, you'd be astounded, you'd be like awestruck that your mimicry was recognized by this person, right? By Jim Carrey, or because who you probably think is the greatest, even greater than you as an actor, and you get to fill in the shoes for a little bit. So I think this really says a lot about the Hollywood industry and about how Jim Carrey doesn't want to be in the limelight anymore, and how he's just done with it. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. I just wanted to disseminate that. It's been 20 minutes, and I think this is a good case of good guy, bad guy, where none of them are a bad guy, but because people assume and don't know the whole story, and because it's a show, right? They're putting on a show that people think it's good guy, bad guy, and delve into the whole topics of, oh, they was replaced, or the government killed them, or he's been dead, or we're never going to see the real Jim Carrey again, or what happened to the real Jim Carrey. The information will come out if for the smart people that know where to look, and I think that's okay. But for now, let's all just agree that Jim Carrey hired somebody to put on a good show, because that's what people were expecting. And you know, his limelight's dying down. He's getting old. He's gotten old. He still looks good for an old guy, but you know what? He's an old guy. Let him be. And I think that's the moral of the story here, right? You get your show, and Jim Carrey gets to be let be. What's wrong with that? There's not much to complain about. But yeah, I personally, I miss that Jim Carrey isn't doing work, even just doing like documentaries. I'd love more Jim Carrey. I'd love Jim Carrey documentaries, because he would just be like out of his zone, being real, and that would be interesting to see. I think maybe very boring, but that would be interesting to see. But he's never gonna do it because he's not getting back in the limelight. So kudos to him, and you know, I hope he has a good retirement. I've been BornSvg. It's not every day you get to check something like this out. There's a lot of awful things going on in the world, and I think this is just a good example of someone trying to do a good thing for people who think they want a good show, an honest show. Well, not honest, but like, you know, like like wrestling is a show. Jim Carrey wants to put on that production and let people still have the magic. I'll see you later. Check out my other videos. I also do a little bit of video game content every now and then. I also do live streams at the crossover of a month, so when a month changes into another month, I'll be streaming sometime around there. Take care until later, and remember, check your sources.